Welcome back to another Bookmas video. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in November, and I believe that total, don't know why I didn't look into this before, but the total was 8 books. Read 8 books in November. A lot of them were different genres. We had some romance, some fantasy, and it was a good reading month. And I got a 5-star read, which is always amazing. So let's just jump right in with the first book that I read, and that was Next Time Will Be Our Turn by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This is actually a new release. It came out in November. I got it as an advanced reader copy from NetGalley, and I ended up rating this 5 stars. It is an LGBT plus romance, and we follow Magnolia, who is basically telling her life and love story to her grandchild, because they're sitting at like this New Year's dinner, family dinner, and Magnolia walks in with a woman, and her grandchild has no idea that her grandma is part of the LGBTQ plus community, and the entire family too is pretty taken aback. So Magnolia finally decides to kind of rehash her entire history to her grandchild, and that takes us on such a journey. Magnolia grows up in a very Indo-Chinese influenced family that is extremely traditional, but they actually send her out to Los Angeles during like high school to get like diploma here and get a degree eventually from college. So she does all of that, and while that is happening, obviously there is a romance brewing, and it's just a beautiful love story, but it's also very sad and heartbreaking because it's very much wrong person, right time, wrong person. It's realistic though, it's life, things happen, things get in the way of romance, and it's a very sad book in some ways, but it's also very inspiring and insightful, and we learn so much about the patriarchal society that Magnolia grows up in, and in spite of that, and trying to kind of come out better because of it. I would say the book was really well paced. I loved the banter with the characters, and I also really loved the writing. So the author, I feel like, did a really good job of like describing certain events really interestingly. Like for example, there's this scene where our main character Magnolia eats a taco for the first time, and it's the way that it's described is so unique and eye-opening, and I'm like, wait, it made me want to eat a taco right then and there. It was really interesting. With everything I said though, don't be fooled. This is definitely an emotional tearjerker about love, perseverance, sisterhood, tragedy, sacrifice, and traditional families. Would absolutely recommend this book. It's definitely become one of my favorite books this year already, and I'm so glad I found a 5-star so late in the year. So that was book 1 that I read in November. The second book we read and finished was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. This is book 4, year 4 of Harry Potter. So this is like right smack dab in the middle of the entire series. I ended up rating this 4 stars. It was a very solid book. I feel like the series itself has been really good. Besides, the second book is probably my least favorite, but this one was really good, very solid. There was so much happening regarding like the plot and the characters. I feel like this one was a very traditional fantasy book because there's like a trials like competition style event going on that doesn't necessarily happen in the other books. So I liked that. It made it pretty different, especially going like so deep into the series. I like how there was such a cool different event happening. Regardless, I really liked it, and I'm still continuing the series. I did read book 5 in November as well, so I'll talk about that in a second, but this one was very solid. We got to follow a couple of characters that we didn't necessarily get to focus on earlier on in the series, and at the end of this book I just remember thinking, well, what the heck is gonna happen next? Because there is quite a big cliffhanger happening at the end of this book with so many things in motion, and you're just like, I have no idea what's gonna happen to our main characters in the next book. Next up, we had our first reread of the entire year, the first book that I've ever reread in my entire life, and it happened to be my favorite book in the entire world, and that is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I love this book. This is a 5-star read for me. Upon reread, it remains a 5-star read. It was so good. This time around, I actually annotated it a bit because I literally couldn't help myself. I love some of the quotes describing the setting, describing some character development that we get. And honestly, there's not much to say besides, obviously I love this book, will forever love this book, and it is now proven that upon reread, I loved it just as much. This book is about Lenny, and we follow her and her family as they move to remote, wild Alaska because her father has some mental health struggles that he is dealing with. He is a Vietnam War veteran, and so that deeply affected him, and he believes part of the solution is moving to remote Alaska away from society, away from traditional society, because he believes the government is kind of out to get him. And so we follow Lenny as she kind of tries to acclimate to this new environment. They also have a very kind of abrupt relationship with moving places, so it happens often, and so she's just kind of like, okay, this is just another place that I'm gonna have to get used to because my family loves to move. And so they do that. We kind of start learning about a lot of our characters who live in Alaska, remote Alaska. A lot of them are very community based because living in Alaska is not for the weak. It is incredibly hard. You have to spend all year basically preparing for winter because during winter you get very limited daylight hours and it's very hard for like hunting and whatnot. So Lenny and her entire family are adapting to that while also struggling internally with their family and then adapting to the environment around them. So there's a lot of challenges that our characters are undergoing while also meeting so many new characters. So that's kind of what the book is about. But I will say, I think my favorite part of this book is just, it is so extremely well-rounded. The pacing is amazing. The characters are very lovable. The plot is pretty thrilling. You don't really know what's gonna happen next. There's a little bit of a mysterious aspect because again, you just don't know what to expect. There's a bit of a romance, there's tragedy, there's grief, there's just some hard stuff going on, and I feel like I get everything when I read this book. So I think that's why it's my favorite book ever, and it stood the test of time. It's really my favorite book ever. Kristen Hanna, favorite author ever, and this is also really, really good to read during like the fall or winter months because Alaska, the landscape is extremely kind of uninhabitable, and I feel like you picture that with like winter weather. So if you haven't picked this book up yet, I would absolutely recommend it for this month or next month because I think it would fit the vibe. I was actually watching like a YouTube video of this guy who lives in Alaska, and he does a lot of like outdoorsy camping videos, and I was watching that and it reminded me, oh my gosh, like The Great Alone. So that's actually why I picked it up and reread it, and I'm really glad I did because I could picture like the landscape so vividly and clearly because I was watching it directly from that YouTube video. So all in all, an amazing experience to reread, my favorite book ever. The next book that I read in November, I actually don't have on me, but it's called If It Makes You Happy, and it is a romance book that I ended up rating 3 stars, which was pretty surprising to me because I feel like going into this book, I had heard nothing but amazing things, and it is quite obviously a very seasonal fall read, and so I feel like those books have a certain stigma or reputation, kind of being they're purely like just nostalgic cozy reads and not much going on in like the plot department. And so I kind of went into that not expecting that because of the great amazing reviews, and I just wasn't obsessed with this book. I read it because it was actually the book club pick for me and my group of friends who are in a book club, and it was actually my pick, so it's kind of funny, but I wasn't obsessed with it. I liked it for the small town nostalgic cozy feelings, and I liked the main characters. I thought they were great. But I don't know, it felt kind of just basic to me. I wasn't really super interested. It was also around 500 pages, which I feel like is kind of long for a romance book, especially a seasonal one. I feel like it didn't have to be that long. There wasn't really much going on. Obviously, it's like a slow burn romance, so we did get that and it was pretty good, but I don't know, it just wasn't anything too different or too unique, which is I think what I was expecting hearing all of the amazing reviews that this book got. I also don't know if it was the book itself or I was in like a little bit of a book slump, like a mini slump maybe, but it took me so long to read, almost an entire month, and that's not typical for me for romance books. So yeah, I don't know what happened here, but wasn't my favorite read of the month. It might have been my lowest rated book of the month actually, but it was still decent. I don't want you to think it's like horrible. It just wasn't what I thought it was gonna be, and I definitely say if you haven't read it, don't bother because it's extremely fall coded, as you can tell by the cover. Ultimately, I felt like the premise was cute. The setting was very alluring, but it just didn't necessarily hit. I did really like the male main character and the female main character. I liked them both. It just really wasn't too crazy. Next up, we have Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors, which I'm very happy to report that I read because I feel like I've been meaning to read this book for a very long time. It's been on my priority list, my TBR, on my radar for a while. I ended up rating this 4 stars, and Cleopatra and Frankenstein, these are actually our main characters, although those are not their actual names. It's Cleo and Frank. And Cleo is a 20-something-year-old woman living in New York City trying to figure her life out when she literally stumbles upon Frank one night night they meet, and that's kind of the end. It's a whirlwind romance, it's an age gap romance, so they get married literally within the first chapter, and from then we kind of just follow them along as they try to kind of converge their two lives together and kind of figure out their roles within the marriage. And it's very much a very sort of character development type of book. There's not too much regarding plot going on, and we do follow a couple of different POVs, which I liked because I felt like it was just a very coming of age in like an adult sense story, following multiple characters. So we obviously get Cleo's perspective, we get Frank's the most, but we also get like one of Frank's co-workers and Cleo's best friend. And so it's nice because these other people are mentioned in conversations, obviously, and because they're a part of our main characters' lives, but it was cool to get to see their perspectives as well, coming from their own POVs. I really liked this book overall. Again, not too much going on plot-wise, but the characters were just so interesting. I didn't necessarily root for them. They're not perfect, they're extremely flawed, and they both, especially our main characters, grew up in very sort of rough childhoods, and they're both really still kind of dealing with the ramifications and the effects of all of that and trying to make their marriage work. There's like things in here that made me really happy, made me really sad. It's just kind of an emotional roller coaster following our characters. There are some events in here that I didn't expect to see, and so I would say maybe trigger warnings because they could be pretty triggering. They're just really two individuals who grew up in very broken families, and they just got the shit end of the stick. There's a lot of love together, there's crying together, there's suffering together, there's hurt together. So we get all of that in this book. Also, the writing was really, really good, and I think that's one thing I've taken away from Coco Mellors, because this is the second book that I've read from her. I read Blue Sisters earlier this year and I really liked it because I like the way she tells character stories. All of her books, or at least the two that I've read, are very character driven, and I really liked that. Her language, the way that she like writes, makes it super like pleasing to my brain. So it makes character driven book work and not boring. Something about her writing just kind of lingers, so I'll leave it at that. Next up, we have the next Harry Potter book that we read and finished, and that is Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix, Year 5, Book 5. This is definitely the longest of the bunch. It took me not that long to read, but long enough because it's obviously a ginormous book. It's almost 900 pages. And this one I ended up rating 4.25 stars. I actually really liked it because we get a lot of characters. We get more insight on characters, and Neville, let me just say, do not mess with Neville because I love him. He's one of my favorite book characters. I have been watching the movies along with the books, and the movies do not do him justice. I love him in the books because he is just so special, and you learn so much more about him, his history, his family, and just him in general. And there's other characters as well that we obviously fall in love with through the books that the movies don't directly translate much. So I really enjoyed this book mostly because of that. I feel like we got a lot of character sort of development, and again, I'm noticing a pattern. I really like books that have that. It was also really entertaining. There's things going on here like the Order of Phoenix that gets explained within the first couple of chapters, but it definitely follows our characters. All Harry Potter books really kind of follow the same premise, which is Harry is back in his like hometown at the beginning of the books. He travels to Hogwarts, spends the whole year there. There's so many things happening, and then at the end he kind of goes back home. So that's kind of the recipe for these Harry Potter books, and this one is probably like my second or probably third favorite book. I think my first favorite is the first book because it's just really good. The second is probably Prisoner of Azkaban. That one is just like so fun towards the end. There's so much happening. And then this one would be my third, even though it is so long. Definitely enjoying the series, but this is my reminder that I've been saying every single time I talk about Harry Potter is please check it out from the library, borrow it from a friend, buy it secondhand. There's so many of these books in circulation, you don't need to buy them brand new. And then last but not least, we have one more book that I want to talk about, and that is this ginormous book, 11/22/63 by Stephen King. Yes, I finally finished this book. I finally read this book. I feel like, hallelujah, because this has been a long time coming. A hugely long time coming. I started this in October and literally finished it like November 30th. It was the last day of the month and I finally finished it. Unfortunately, I ended up rating it 3 stars. I didn't love this book, which is really sad to say because I'm like, I really have not seen anything but amazing things. So I'm like, what am I missing? Is this a me problem? It was good. The plot was good. The characters are really cool. There's a really endearing romance in here as well. But for the length of it, I just felt like it was too slow. And obviously readers are going to be turned off seeing this ginormous book. So it's like, why? why would it be slow? And it just was a little too boring for me at some, I mean, I was listening to it majority via audiobook, so maybe that's why, but I feel like I got the audiobook recommended so much. So I don't know, maybe it was just me and Stephen King. I've read Billy Summers by him as well, and I feel like I liked that book better. That one was like a 3.5 star, this one being a 3. And I don't know if it's just maybe Stephen King and me that don't mesh too well, so that might be it, but I didn't love it, and I honestly probably wouldn't recommend it just because it's way too long for me to recommend something I didn't absolutely love. I might be, you know, the unpopular opinion and the oddball out because time and time again people have said they love this book. Now, I didn't even get to talk to you guys about what it's about. 11/22/63 is the date that President JFK was assassinated. So this is a time travel book. We follow a high school teacher, Jake Epping, who goes back in time to try to change the events of that fateful day. And we get kind of what happens before. He takes this really long journey to go back to 11/22/63. So the actual date of this happening is like the very last part of the book. And so it just was too long for me. I don't know. I didn't love it. That's all I'm gonna say. That's all I read in November. Hopefully you guys are enjoying Bookmas, and I'll see what I read in December. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.